We are glad to be here presenting the paper Impact of Mobile Technologies at the University in Argentina by Alejandro Spiegel, Georgina Rodriguez, Melina Salviolo, Alicia Peña, and Susana Ferragasti. We belong to the research group tecmovae from the National Technological University of Argentina, School of San Nicolas. The spread of mobile devices in Argentina motivated the research of the impact of this available equipment at the university. From some data built from surveys and interviews, attitudes and social practices of professors and students at the first year of university are analyzed, and possible explanations related to the use of mobile technologies are asked. The technological equipment that teachers and students that enter the public Argentine university have has changed in recent years. Nowadays, almost all of them have mobile devices, such as notebooks, netbooks, and smartphones, that they carry or may carry with them across different contexts they pass through. This change has been produced because of the proliferation of mobile devices in daily life and the plan Conectar Igualdad from the government. It has distributed near 2.5 million of netbooks between students of high school. It is worth asking then, which uses does this equipment have at the university? In other words, what professors do in front of this equipment available, and also what students do with the devices they have. Besides, beyond the reference or the specific instruction for the use of these technologies, one of the most frequent social practices in the academic commonness is the access to the information, to accumulated knowledge. In this regard, the new screens offer new supports, formats, and paths for the information, and for social practices related to communication. In this way, there are a number of questions that arise also. For example, what format do the study materials have in the first year of university? Or how are these formats related to the students' preferences and their social practices in everyday life? Moreover, how do they read with these technologies? How do they look for information? Where did they learn? Are these issues addressed in the first year of college? The issue addressed in this article fits within a context in which further changes are seen as a logical step forward for university. Some authors, such as Platini and Manuel, even talk of a new educational institution where information and communication technologies are recognized as a key enabler for innovation. Other writers, like John Dian Moretti, Martinez, and Alicia Garcia Peñalvo, provide useful clues on how to carry out this process of change. Garcia Peñalvo describes a methodological shift, learner-centered instruction. Information and communication technologies are central to this process, as this author says, because students will have mobile devices that would help them take autonomous decisions during their learning experience. Instead, Dondi and Moretti are more concerned about the adaptation of technology platforms and the design of new learning approaches. Accordingly, Martinez asks for the adaptation of existing methods to the new era determined by the proliferation of mobile technology. Accordingly to Goodyear and Enge and Nicolas, the potential of these modern tools would probably have significant impact as they can, for instance, facilitate the learning experience in different settings of students working, academic or daily life. Nevertheless, they examine and present different dimensions of sustainable development to achieve these potentials. Conversely, instead of this critical approach of activating ICT in higher education institutions, the obvious and automatic need to respond to the changes that the new generation of digitally empowered students demand is appealed frequently. Generally, these changes are expressed more significantly at the levels of infrastructure rather than at pedagogical levels. Within this framework, it is not surprising that, for instance, Conoul, Delat, Dillon, and Darby argue that there are few, if any, teachers' directions that involve the use of mobile technologies in the first year of English universities. Moreover, at a global level, not all teachers are eager to incorporate ICT into their teaching, claims Pedro. In this regard, it is interesting to ask these issues in a context in which the demands are much clearer than the ways to bring them into concrete actions. Now, we're going to show the analysis of some results of the research of our project. In the first survey made in 2012, the students who had just enrolled the engineering careers in Facultad Regional San Nicolás were asked about their daily use of technology, their experience of using it in high school, and their expectations for their first year of college. One of the issues being investigated was how students learned to use the Internet. From the data shown in this table, it can be seen that 80% of the students learn mostly on their own, and only 12% did it by means of some relative or friend. Only 5% reported having learned from the teaching of a teacher. From surveys completed about the end of the year, it could be seen that 8 of 10 students sought information on the Internet related to their academic work during the year 2012. That is to say, during the first year in college. The 84% of them were satisfied with their ability in performing these searches. Only 12% would like to know more about the subject, and 4% admitted not knowing or didn't answer. However, through interviews with teachers, it came out that they believe that students do not know how to search. They have no criteria for doing so. However, in interviews was not seen as a concern the worry of enriching this habit. Teachers do not perform guidance or informational literacies for the students. Students also expressed that the abilities to use Internet help them to satisfy their own needs related to the material searched in Internet. As you can see in the table, about the question on how comfortable do the students feel performing different tasks using their different mobile devices, and 85% said that he found an Internet what they are looking for. About choosing a screen, in students' survey, data on the reading habits of students were also collected, why they read and what kind of format they use for reading. As you can see from the data summarized in this table, whatever the purpose of the motivation of reading is, students choose the screens instead of printed materials for reading. According to 71% of the students surveyed, being comfortable is a great advantage for reading and searching for information in Internet. Nevertheless, from the analysis of interviews done to teachers, they expressed that from their point of view, students prefer to read on paper, and also that most of the materials offered to students in college are printed notes. The poll conducted on students at the beginning of first year at the college also inquired about students' thoughts regarding to the use of mobile devices in the year coming. Students expressed great expectations for this fact. It was found that students expressed great expectations for this fact. The vast majority imagined that teachers would use them as resources for teaching, and that they would recommend them to use these technologies to help their learning process, and also that they would use to communicate with them. Here, in the graphics shown, you can see the thoughts of the students about if teachers will use mobile devices for better teaching, if they will use for communicating to students, and if they will ask them to use the devices in class. As it is shown, the high expectations of students are not mere wishful thoughts. They involve the display of very concrete scenarios of application where mobile technology has an important place as regards to the update expected at university. Nevertheless, the results shown here reveal a different reality. A remarkable 71% of students said that they had never used the netbooks on a teacher's invitation. This was also shown in the teacher's interview. From there, we could see that, in general, there was no initiative from the teachers to make the students carry their devices to the class. The 13% obtained in ever could be interpreted as an isolated course in one subject once the teacher asks his or her students to bring computers for working in class or to perform some extra activity outside the classroom. However, when students were asked if their teachers had used netbooks for teaching, the 48% said ever, as shown in the figure. This may seem contradictory to what is shown in the other figure, but it is not quite so. Taking into account the records of requests of computer equipment, it appears that mobile technology may have been the projector and the teacher's netbook, or the one provided by the department, for example, for making PowerPoint presentations. A question made at the end of the year to students shown that there is a significant percentage of students using their mobile devices on their own initiative. In other words, in spite of the lack of teachers' instruction, students decided to use these technologies for academic life as they do in the rest of their daily lives. With all the data collected on the table, we arrived at some interesting conclusions. Students that begin first year of university have mobile devices. Furthermore, they frequently carry them to university in their backpacks and use them during the breaks. However, majority of teachers do not instruct students to use these devices either inside or outside the classroom. Likewise, students, as part of the social practices they develop in the rest of their daily lives, use them to communicate and to search information in the network. It is assumed that students have sufficient intellectual tools to seek and to select for information, assumption that is often incorrect. Students' reading habits and the information support they use or prefer are not assessed or contrasted either. Moreover, majority of the consulted chairs continue offering materials of study and consultation in printed formats. Therefore, the statement about the massive availability of potentially usable mobile technologies for the teaching and learning process in the first year of university, the negative of the existence of this equipment that is expressed by the absence of concrete usage in the classroom and or instructions for the academic utilization of its potential. The negative about the expectations of use of this equipment that the students bring and that might be capitalized in shape of continuing motivation for the learning. The negative of the need to qualify students in the search, in the access to information, in the management and the utilization of the information published on the network as part of the intents of the new 21st century's professional information. The negative about the new learners' preferences and reading habits that implies new cognitive overloading for students. Thus, it can be said that although there is already an ongoing process of change, it's still incipient. It still requires management policies that facilitate the overcoming of this situation. In these terms, for instance, it would be interesting to assign teacher training instances and ways of pedagogical support for teachers to recognize the ways of knowing of the new subjects of learning and more easily tap the potential of new mobile equipment inside and outside the college classroom. Well, to keep in contact, we are the group tecmovae, Mobile Technologies Applied to Education, and this is our mail and our website. Thank you for your time.